Welcome to Instagram.
Welcome to our Facebook Live feed. I'm Mitch Stokes.
I'm Frank McDonough.
And we're here to talk about early specialization in sport. How we doing, Vince? Can you hear us?
What's up, Vince? I'm not sure if I know who that is, but...
Vince Shea.
Oh, okay.
Remember Vince Shea?
Yeah.
Vince Shea used to go get swole with me.
Swole. Well, we're doing live on Instagram on my personal Instagram page, which is where most of my archery followers are. So we got 2 live feeds going. So if you see us look away, you know why.
All right. So first disclaimer, before anyone gets ahead, I want to just say that this is not a blanket statement. None of these statements are blanket. There's always exception to the rule. There are sports out there that do require early specification because of the early peak that's involved with some of these sports like gymnastics. You're really not going past 18 to 19 years old in women's gymnastics. So it does require an early specification, early introduction to the sport as early as 5 or 6, getting competitive by the time they're 10 or 12 years old. But again, those are exceptions to the rule. As a general rule, and that's what we're going to talk about, is at large specification at an early age, we're talking pre-high school, just isn't appropriate. It's not best for the athlete, the student athlete, physically or psychologically. So we're just going to talk about a few things that entails. Frank, you want to get started?
Yeah, I mean, we were just discussing, we're doing some call it podcasts homework.
Yeah.
We were watching something specific, and a gentleman brought up 4 specific words: the race to nowhere in youth sports. The race to nowhere. You know, when you think about the race to nowhere, what are we doing? What is the goal? And what direction are we pushing these kids? So that prompted some discussion on statistics. So before we dive too much into the meat and potatoes of what Mitch wants to discuss, I'm just going to throw out some numbers. And these numbers are to the bigger sports, the bigger high school youth sport, or the high school sports, but they all start at the youth level, travel level, such and so forth and whatnot. So, you know, we looked at, and I think what was our statistic was 40 million kids play youth sports. Okay. 40 million kids play youth sports a year, give or take, I'm sure, quite a bit. The statistical number is that 70% of that 40 million drop out of youth sports. With that 70%, that's 7 out of 10 by the age of 13. So they're classifying youth sports up until 14 years old or 13 years old. So 3 of those 4, so 3 out of every 4 done by high school in youth sports. And then we got into some, you know, the idea, okay, so we know how many people aren't playing into high school. So what's the percentage, or what is the statistical information from high school to the professional ranks? And what we found out is that 0.6% of high school baseball players go pro, 0.08% of high school players in football go pro, and 0.03% of high school players go professional in basketball. Now, baseball and basketball, along with soccer, are probably your 3 of your biggest travel sports
in this country.
Yeah. Football, not so much.
Contact sports. If you were to tell a parent that their kid needs to play contact sports year-round, usually they look at you like you're nuts.
Yeah.
But for some reason, baseball and soccer and basketball aren't looked at that way.
No, and they definitely should be. And
yes.
Likewise,
especially soccer.
Myself as an archery coach, I do not. This is probably a part going to come up later on, but never ever pursue, kids to shoot 365 days a year.
No,
they should be doing other things, other sports.
I wouldn't even tell an adult to do that, really.
No, definitely not. So at that rate, we covered the statistics. What's up, Bryce? And there's the discussion on lays the foundation for what we're going to talk about with the specialization, with kids playing the same sport all year long.
Yeah.
So
So
Mitch, it's all you.
all right. Early specialization. Well, what is that? It's early starting. It's preteens as young as 5 and 6 years old in this country. People have seen the outliers, the Tiger Woods of the last 2 decades, and decided, well, that person started really early. The parents got it started early. I'm going to start my kid early. He'll have a head start, or she'll have a head start and be ahead of the competition. And by and large, that is true for the first few years if you do get a kid introduced to a sport early, a skill-demanding sport. If they learn it and they're a fairly athletic kid and they have good eye-hand coordination, they can do better than their peers because they're introduced early. However, what we see across the board is Tiger Woods is the exception, not the rule. What about the vast majority of players that he loses against on a regular basis for the last 2 decades that didn't start at 5, 6 years old? They might not have started golf till they were in high school or picked it up in college. It's just not the rule generally. Generally, what happens is the late starters tend to either beat out or even just equal or get close to these early starters. The early starters tend to burn out. They get psychologically burnt out. It's very demanding psychologically to compete at that level year-round, 365 days out of year. Like I said, I wouldn't ask anyone to do that, much less a 5, 6-year-old. It's just not appropriate to specialize in one sport or one discipline like that until they're further on in their development, say middle of high school. And that's saying that the person's got really high potential. They've already shown that they have the desire, not just the talent, but they also have the desire. That's very important for them. Otherwise, like Frank said, it's a race to nowhere. Where are you trying to get? You're trying to win. You're trying to get a scholarship. Like we talked about, the statistics say that that's a very low likelihood. It's not to say that your child's not going to. He could be, by all means, a very talented kid. But it's a very small fraction of what's out there, and they should be pursuing other things, not just one sport. They should pursue other activities. The whole point is enjoyment. It's not winning at that age. It's supposed to be enjoyment of sport, enjoyment of activity, and getting them outside and doing things physical, rather than ultimately teaching the child to hate the sport, by extension, hate the coach and hate coaches in general. Then they end up with a bad relationship with the parents. And by extension, later on in life, you'll find that they have a problem with authority. They get themselves into a lot of trouble later on once they are out of their parents' roof. They're out in college on their own. They did get their scholarship. Even then, you have problem children that they don't know how to behave on their own. They end up in a lot of trouble. They end up losing their scholarship because too much time was spent on their athletic ability and not enough on rounding out their character and teaching them what was important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even we talked about early specialization, the archery world is a little bit different because it is a non-contact, but it is a physical sport.
Yeah.
But there's I think there's a mental, call it, not anguish, but there's a mental side to the competitive side of archery that can be just as damaging as the physical. And if parents don't manage that on our side, we know, I mean, absolutely positively, there's probably dozens of archers that started very, very young within professional archery. Professional archery is very small, microscopic compared to some of these other
it's like
sports.
weightlifting.
But
it's probably larger than weightlifting.
It's larger than weightlifting, but the professional side, there's not really that many. There's a couple hundred across the country that are competing weekend in, week out. It's not a lot. And they're not, and I would say that from the professionals, there's probably a even smaller percentage that's actually living off of archery.
Yeah.
Most of them work full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Or
they're running their own shop.
Right. They're doing something, outside of just literally legitimately competing to make a living. So, it's a little bit different in that regard than these other sports, but it still doesn't take away. I see it all the time at small, regular. I see it in my own doors every once in a while. Just there's a pressure, an outlying pressure from parents to win. And I get that. I think winning is important, but
Everybody likes to win.
But it's important to manage the idea of winning, the idea to get better, and they always want, there's just this, in all of youth sports, travel sports, local, little league, recreation.
Oh, that's a big one.
The little league.
There's some fights on the little league.
Little league gets a little
kids.
crazy. And I'm sure that some of the people watching this or that have logged in would agree. It's just notoriously parents are the underlying issue with the kids who can't move on.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get that early specialization, usually there's a parent always behind doing this. Yeah. Pushing.
Yeah.
Here, we're going.
And you can ask the kid, I mean, I've had kids in the past, and because I do volunteer at the scholastic level in junior high and high school. And you can ask the kid, well, why are you here? Do you even like this? And they may tell you yes. And even if you have a very extroverted kid that's very open, he may not say or may not tell his parents he doesn't want to do it or she doesn't want to do it anymore for the fear of not necessarily retaliation, but fear of disappointing their parents. Yeah. They don't want to disappoint anyone, so they just continue to do it because they don't know what else to do. Yeah. They're stuck in a rock and a hard place.
Or there's some places where where the winning side is parent motivated. Yeah. But the participation side, the love of the sport side, is the kid. The kid just loves the sport. Yeah. They don't care if they win or not. Mm-hmm. But the necessity to win to make their parents happy is what eventually turns them away. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the thing.
Someone's being facetious.
Yeah.
It's never the parents' fault.
Yeah, it's never the parents' fault.
No, it's coach's fault.
It's always the coach's fault.
What I want to do is kind of go through a bullet list. I got 5 major points as far as the risks involved with early specification and specialization in sport. Sport year-round, that's your sole activity, is number 1. Like I said, they learn to hate the sport. Very seldom do you have a kid go from 5 years old on into college and they don't have days where they don't want to go to practice. They've had enough. They want to take a break. They quit. They walk off the team. I had teammates that did that throughout my high school career where they had enough. And it wasn't necessarily anything that the coaches did. It just, they didn't want to be there anymore. Any reason they found to have a argument with the coach, they were having it out, and then 2-3 days later, parents dropping the kid off at practice, making the kid go. They talk to the coach takes the kid back, and the whole cycle kind of starts over again. And then you have a kid that ends up hating what they're doing. I had a teammate that eventually just hated running because their parent made him go run and made him do the cross-country team and made him do the track team. They might have had enjoyment early on, and they like the social aspect, which is really important at that age, even in high school. Kids are there for a social reason. It's fun to be around your peers and compete, but it's a social thing. She got to the point where she didn't like it anymore. She didn't want to do it anymore, and I don't blame her. And like I said, by extension, people having trouble with authority. If you look at all authority figures at an early age, 5, 6 years old, is people breathing down your neck all the time. When you get through adolescence like that and you develop that attitude, it's not very healthy. You go to a job and you have to deal with an employer. That's not a good relationship to be in. If you have that attitude, you have that outlook on life that everyone's out to get you, you have constant pressure, or you put pressure on yourself because you feel like everyone's watching you. Yeah, everyone wants you to do this or do that, and you have to do it the best than anybody else. You have to win all the time. That carries over to the workplace, and next thing you know, Johnny over there is 32 years old and he's having a panic attack. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and some of my insight on that side of things comes from being a varsity basketball official for 10 years and watching the relationship between parents and athlete and parents and coaches and athlete and coaches. And if you watch these events take place, and I officiated from youth, as in, 8, 7, 8,
the officials.
9.
It's usually their fault first.
It's always the officials' fault. Then it's the parents. Ken, you were wrong. But you watch this dynamic as an official. You see everything. You're in the middle of the floor. You see everything. You hear everything, even though we just ignore parents and coaches.
Yeah.
But you hear the things. You watch the parent yell at the kid on the floor. You watch the kid yell back at the coach. The coach is frustrated yelling at the kid.
Yeah.
Coach and the parents start yelling at each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just this, I watched it in football season this year, when we're sitting in the stands and you can see, you hear, fans,
Coaching
parents,
from the stadium stairs.
coaching from the stadium,
Yeah.
yelling at the coaches yelling at the kids, and typically the kids just get caught in the middle.
Yeah. They're like, who do I listen to?
What do I do?
It's very confusing. It's confusing out there in public during a game. And it's confusing in the home and at practice when you have parents bad-mouthing the coach or bad-mouthing the teacher or whatever. It could be not just sports. And the kid is being told what to do by the coach. They're still being dropped off for 2.5 hours. And, they're supposed to respect this person. But it's very conflicting when they have a parent at home that doesn't agree and is very vocal about it, which is very damaging.
And oftentimes that specialization is reinforced, again. That's where it starts. These kids don't decide to specialize themselves.
No, that's a decision it's made by the adults for them,
whoever,
unfortunately.
Could be a coach.
Yeah.
Could be a parent. But
going down to number 2, acute chronic injury. I don't know. I have a couple examples myself, just watching this over the last 6 years, being a strength and conditioning coach. I've had plenty of people who they have a club coach telling them, look, if your kid doesn't play year-round, whether it's soccer, baseball, what have you, those are the 2 major ones in the area. If they don't play year-round, they're never going to go Division I. And again, what was the stat?
The stat for Division I, actually, I think the stat was over here for Division I. It was
under 1% reached
under
Division
1%.
I scholarships.
And then
under 1%.
And then 2% of the 1% go pro.
2% of the 1% go pro.
Yeah.
It's very small.
Yeah.
That just going year round doing that. For one, the reason people get injured doing one discipline year round is it's just overuse. It's the same as if I was when I did endurance. When I was a cross country runner, coaches said, done. You need to back off for a while. They understood peaking, dropping off volume, taking a rest week or 2 after, or even a month off of sport after the season was over. It's a beating down on the body.
Yeah.
Soccer is one of them. You're just running around the field constantly, constant pounding on the joints. They have very young developing bodies. And then they're doing it year round. They're never working different ranges of motion. They're never strengthening their bodies. Large problem with especially the soccer players that I see is they're not doing any strength training. Very little strength training. What they're doing is they're repeating their sport. They're being very specific when they go to a specialist, and they're not going to a specialist. They're going to someone that's taking their parents' money and telling them they're going to make them a faster soccer player.
That's right.
What they have to do is hurdle hops improperly, plyometrics improperly, and running up and down a indoor turf field.
They do speed and agility.
The speed and agility.
To get faster when all they really do is get faster at speed and agility.
They get better at speed and agility. They're doing the dot drills. And the dot drills have there's an application. It's accuracy with footwork.
Yeah.
It doesn't carry necessarily on a field as far as takeoff speed. They're not going to all of a sudden be able to run a 4.2, 40. What happens is they're just repeating what they just did for the last 6 months. They're just doing it in a gym during the middle of the winter. And then they're going out and playing soccer in the indoor league. And then they're doing travel. I mean, there's one parent in particular years ago, I think the kid was in 3 different leagues. I want to say 3 different soccer leagues throughout the year, cycling through. It was just nuts. That kid ended up having major foot problems because they're developing. 10, 12 years old, they're still developing in high school. She ended up getting surgery on the feet and I believe on the hips as well. And I tried to work with them a little bit. We did some strength training. Immediately within a few weeks of doing the strength training, full depth squats, working range of motions they weren't used to working, the pain kind of subsided a little bit. They weren't in as much discomfort anymore. Their flexibility improved. They saw turnaround as far as just raw power on the field. But repeating what you're doing on the field by being very sport specific, doing that specific work isn't necessarily going to help them. What they need to be doing is doing different things, like completely different things sometimes help out, gives their body a rest, gives their brain rest. Like going from something like soccer to archery.
Yeah.
You give their legs a break. They're still exercising. They're still being physical, but not in the same capacities, not moving in the same planes of motion all the time. They don't have the impact on the body that they just had in the last 3 to 6 months. It gives them a physical break and a psychological break.
Yeah, so or a different angle on the psychological side where they're not being as competitive, but they're still utilizing the concept of setting goals and focusing on balance and just self-awareness of what's going on. But on the flip side of that, like what we see in archery, what I know you've seen in weightlifting, like I have kids from all walks of life come through the door to shoot archery. Some that just shoot archery, some that dance, gymnasts, football players, baseball players, soccer players. And you see an immediate ability to just pick it up especially from like my dancers and gymnasts. I have seen
kinesthetically aware, big time.
The kinetic awareness of being able to pick up a bow, use hand-eye coordination, but more importantly, manipulate the body where it needs to go.
You see chest open, shoulders back, they know exactly what you're saying.
And that's you look at, so if I'm seeing that carry over to archery from these kids who are already athletic in some other manner that requires strength, conditioning, balance, you're going to see vice versa. If a kid comes in and shoots archery, say they're a runner or I don't know, a baseball player, but they shoot archery from the end of what would be hunting season, November through March, and then they start to really, because roughly March. Yeah. Well, but it's not an overbearing sport where you can't shoot.
You can go a little bit longer.
Two days a week, I mean, and let's face it, most kids there's not necessarily that much archery to go around. There could be.
No, there could be maybe one week. If they're lucky, there's one a week. Probably once every couple of weeks if there's a tournament somewhere. Right?
And let's face it, I mean, that's what coaches are looking for. That's what college coaches are looking for. Mm-hmm. They want that well-versed, adaptable, well-rounded athlete.
Yeah, they want someone that can, hey, I don't need you to be a point guard. I need you to be a forward. And you know what? You have the build for it. And you have the ability to do it. That's what I want you to do. This is what you're going to play your sophomore year now. All of a sudden, what's the player going to say? Well, I can't do that, coach. No, you want a versatile athlete. They're more durable. Someone that does different training throughout the year, whether it's track and field, cross country, maybe the wrestling. They're doing a variety of sports early on in their age, and maybe they're not even that competitive with it, but it's still developing their body in different ways that they're missing out on. Not to mention the enjoyment. Like, what a tragedy would it be if you had someone that spent their entire childhood, so they were 17, 18 years old, trying to make Division I basketball. And they just weren't, they were better than average, but they were better than an average high school player that played year round. And then he turns 25, 30 years old and finds something like weightlifting, or he finds baseball. He finds that he can actually hit really well, or he can golf really well. Yeah. What a waste of a childhood. Yeah. That
and money.
Waste of money. Not to mention, like I said earlier, the first point was with the broken down relationships with the coaches and parents. Mm-hmm. That was wasted time, money, and effort when he should have been trying other things, and then you don't know what you're missing out on. I mean, he could have been a freak at whatever sport he did try, but there was such a focus early on because at 7 he threw a nice free throw. Yeah. The parents freak out. Like, oh my God, my kid's gonna go to the NBA.
Well, he's got a 0.03% chance in basketball.
So 0.0, that's the smallest one, the smallest crew there. Yeah. Acute chronic injury, just getting back to that. Young ages, when I'm talking young age, I'm saying pre-high school, even into early high school, depending when they hit puberty. Those kids are just not physically or psychologically adapted to handle large amounts of volume. What I mean by volume is constant play, 2 to 3 hours of structured practice, competition constantly. it just burns them out psychologically and physically.
That-
Their body's not ready for it.
Now-
They don't have the hormones to deal
And
with
I
it.
don't know about you because I don't know what you did as a youth, but I know as a youth athlete, all I did was archery. I competed from 8 until 16, but around 13, 14 is when everything dove downhill.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, and it's not, while my dad was persistent and there was a requirement, because I reached a level of competition where, okay, in order for you to move on and become more competitive, once you breach that top 3, top 5, top 10 in the country, all of a sudden the dynamic changes a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
the
that's
position.
appropriate for most kids.
But I myself
Yeah.
mentally was not
You weren't
able to
Mhm.
take that responsibility.
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I had done archery for so long, and then add injury to insult, or injury really, I had an issue with my hand, and I was just shooting in pain, constantly shooting in pain, tournament after tournament. For a year straight, I shot in pain because I loved archery, but it wasn't fun. And then you add injury on top of it because I was doing specifically wrong with, I had a great coach, but improper technique. And that cultivated into me leaving the sport competitively around 16 years old. And it was just a slow progression down once I had peaked real early, well before everybody else.
Yeah.
And I mean, it happens, and I'm thankful to this day, not to get off a tangent, that it did happen, because I wouldn't be where I'm at now as an archery coach, as a level 3 USA archery coach, owning a training center and so on and so forth. Probably wouldn't be where I'm at, but
things happen for a reason sometimes.
Yeah, in some regards. I mean, that's where, I'm a prime example of how that burnout comes, and thankfully as an adult, I recognized it to try to avoid that from all the other kids I work with. But
well, for me, I was lucky as far as that goes. If anything, my dad probably could have pushed me a little bit harder, but arguably was, if you joined a team, from the time we were 6 or 7 on, when we finished the season, we weren't allowed to quit. And usually what would happen is we'd finish the season and find that we liked it. We would sign back up again the next year.
Yeah.
But I don't recall hearing about travel teams throughout the year, playing soccer year round. Like, this wasn't a thing in the early 90s. It just wasn't a thing. At least I wasn't aware of it. Yeah. There was camps during the summer.
There was basketball.
There was camps.
I know. I recall myself playing. 8th grade, I got really heavily into basketball. Played basketball, varsity.
We had pickup games.
Played a lot of pickup
in the neighborhood.
games in the neighborhood. But nowadays, nobody does that.
No, you never see kids out there with.
There's no kids playing pickup games.
And I hated basketball
because they're at travel ball practice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's structured. It's structured and organized.
I was a district qualifying freshman in track playing travel basketball at the same time. It was my request. Don't get me wrong. But and all the coaches are like, "Oh, we need you. Oh, we need you. Oh, we need you." That was a topic of discussion for this evening. But
point 3, wasted youth. We kind of got into that already.
Yeah.
No great performance. Division 3 at best, if you're lucky. Really, you should be waiting until they display a real talent, and I'm talking post-puberty. A lot of times what happens with the football is their orientation for parents and youth athletes, so everyone is on the same page, especially freshmen. They have team meetings. I know for the wrestling team, we have a team meeting with the coaches. We sit down, we introduce ourselves to the parents at night. Now, we do ask that they show. Not every parent gets that involved. We explain how we're going to run the program, what the kids and the parents are expected to do, what's expected of them, both performance-wise and behavior-wise.
Yep,
these are the standards.
Yeah, we do the same. We have a code of conduct that parents must sign. Parents have, maybe this is a little bit over the top, but I do separate the parents from the kids, and highly encourage parents not to interact with kids while they're on the shooting line.
Oh my God,
Same as if, on a platform, on the soccer field, on a basketball floor.
Well, could you imagine?
It's that same concept of, listen,
yeah,
there's a time for you to be a parent, and then there's a time for you to be the coach. But if I'm the coach, then you should do your best to be the best parent you possibly can, and not the coach.
Yeah. Hands off. At some point, you got to take hands off. You
Hands
don't want to be a
off
helicopter
approach.
parent.
No.
I mean, could you imagine if this wasn't an archery range and it was a shooting range. Can you imagine parents running up on the line with handguns to the kid's hand? No, bad idea.
This is my philosophy, and then Travis Mash from Mash Elite Performance made this comment. Once an athlete gets to within 90% of capacity, whatever that athlete is doing, whether it's a snatch or a clean and jerk, whether it's a deadlift, whether it's a back squat, whether they're on the competitive archery line, where that kid is on a pitching mound. And that became the thought because Lauren Berger was just tuned in. And I know Lauren's big on a lot of this stuff as a high level college athlete. If a kid is within that 90% of optimal performance, there's no coaching to be had.
No, what are you going to say to him?
What are you going to change? And I try to explain that to parents.
That's about it.
On the competition line, on a 3D course, on a basketball floor, wherever that may be, there is no coaching to be done. If they don't have the tools necessary to do it right then and there, you're not going to provide it in the moment. You provide it on the practice, on the
best thing you can do,
field, wherever.
Yeah, best thing you do is a coach really is pat them on the back, say you have this, you know what to do, because by then they should know their job.
Absolutely.
Especially like an accuracy sport like archery or weightlifting. If the kid's going out there for their third snatch at a national meet, what am I going to say? I can't go out there and lift the weight for them. I'm going to give them a word of encouragement.
Yep.
Go do your job. Go do your thing.
That's right.
Go do your thing. That's the best you can do. Yelling from Matt's side doesn't help. We have parents that do that at the wrestling team.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get like the emotional cheering side of it. Yeah, well, absolutely. Totally, we're not saying don't cheer on your kid.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a funeral home at the gym when everyone's watching.
Yeah, but it's not, it's not one of those things where you're, whether that's just baseball, for example, when your kid's on the mound, when you have to constantly tell your child, step straight toward the pitcher, and constantly giving direction. Listen, if they don't remember it in the moment, you can tell them they're not hearing you. They might hear your voice.
It's like hearing
but
underwater.
They're not retaining anything.
No, it's one ear out the other. There's so much heightened. Number 4, stunted long-term potential. They miss out on building a base of fitness when they specialize too early. They don't build a base of fitness. Let's say you're talking about a baseball player. Can you imagine a kid that plays baseball year-round? They're going to be this amazing pitcher, but they can't run a half a mile without looking like they're going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
They're completely out of shape. They have no base of fitness. So when they do go, let's say they make it to a point where they're in high school and they're playing really competitively, they can't keep up. They don't have the psychological. They haven't been in other areas where they have a hard time, like they didn't run that 6 mile or whatever it is, that difficult thing that they're not that great at, to build some character, build some grit, where like, hey, this is hard, but you got to do it and you got to get through it. That adversity, they've never come across that. They get to it where they've just played 6 games straight and they're mentally checked out. They're done.
Yep.
That's what you have, is they don't have any basic fitness physically or mentally to prepare them for that next level. Even if they had a ability to operate at that level, like let's say they have a legitimate shot at going professional, because they didn't do those other things, that other physical and psychological preparedness, they fall short because they're not ready. They can't handle the stress.
Yep.
And physically, they don't have enough of a broad range. We're talking about a high level football. They never did track and field. They never did anything but play football one season out of the year.
Play football and lift all year long, or something like that.
And if they had a decent strength and conditioning specialist, maybe if they had him going out and doing hill sprints, and doing a workout,
I would say it's the last 5 years that we've seen real strength and conditioning programs hitting local high school area.
Yeah,
the local. I mean, and I'm not knocking some of the coaches that helped with like the lifting, but let's face it, it wasn't performance.
No, their job was to get the kids ready for football. The job was not to get them. They're not strength and conditioning specialists. They're high school football coaches.
Right.
Their job is to get them on the field and get moving and win games.
Yep, that's right.
Teach them the game. Their job is not to get a 600-pound back squat out of somebody.
No.
And really, that's kind of unrealistic for most kids.
Mhm.
You know, that's like we talked about, the 1%.
The 1%.
That's the 1%.
Mhm.
Let's see. Let's move on from that. Number 5, they miss out on other sports and activities to discover their true talents. Like I said, what a shame would it be if we had a hidden gem like that for that long, working on being the best possible pitcher. They get, 19, 20 years old, and they discover, man, I'm kind of good at this weightlifting thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really behind now because I've never even touched a barbell. Because I didn't do any strength training because I was too busy playing baseball year round.
Mhm.
That I never put any time in the gym. I haven't even squatted before in my life, and now I got to do a snatch and a clean and jerk. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now does that mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, it's just too late? No. But he's not going to lift at the level that he probably could have if he had been doing that steadily for a few months out of the year, where he did a mesocycle with a local club, lifted weights, maybe went to a powerlifting meet once a year. Those are good experiences for a kid.
Yeah, and I think, and part of the catalyst that attributes to that happening is kids who get so deep into the sport at the dime of mom and dad that they won't say no. They don't have the confidence, maybe as a younger athlete, to be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh no. Absolutely.
Because mom and dad invested $10,000 last year.
Well, I've heard people say that. I've heard not in my gym. I've never heard that, but I have heard at the track or elsewhere or at a game.
I'll never tell my dad that. I'll never tell my mom
that. No, I've heard that the parents tell the kid, "Do you know how much money we've invested?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? I mean, yes, you should invest in your child, but looking at it for an immediate return from them. To me, it's borderline abusive. It's mentally abusive.
In some regards, absolutely.
Do you know how much money we invested? We said this, and that, and like the kid doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Drop it.
Yeah, I mean, and we see that in archery in some regards, where we have parents that will go out and buy top of the line everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see these kids, they show up, and this kid is 10, 11 years old, has a $2,000, $2,500 worth of equipment, and they're standing there and they're frustrated, and they have a scowl on their face, and mom and dad, or dad is oftentimes dad,
just watching everything,
eyes buried in the binoculars, and and it's there's this communication from the shooting line back to the parent, and it's ongoing,
super intense,
and there's a kid standing next to him with a smile on his face, a $300 bow, and probably shooting the exact same scores.
Yeah, and having a great time doing it.
And having a great time doing it.
And
as coaches, well, in that regard, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but it's our responsibility the same to make sure that these kids have that fun.
Yeah.
Encourage them to challenge themselves, pull them back when necessary, give them a little push later on down the road.
Oh yeah. There's a time and a place for everything.
There's a time and a place for it, to make sure that they're still able to have fun and maybe have that desire to go out and do something else, whether it be hunting, which is kind of why we're here talking about. It's not just other sports that you need to do. Yeah, could be other activities. So you can.
The really young ones, when we talk about how ludicrous it is lately with the 5 to 10-year-olds.
Yeah,
they should be out playing with sticks in the mud, throwing rocks at each other, and making dams and climbing trees. I mean, I asked a kid the other day. I think he was teaching him how to climb the rope, and he was having a hard time. I was trying to give him a pep talk. He said, you climb trees, and he looked at me like I was from outer space. Climb trees. He couldn't remember the last. I mean, you're talking about a 10, 11-year-old kid. He couldn't remember the last time he climbed a tree.
It's crazy.
I was getting screamed at all the time for climbing trees. But those are the sorts of things that children should be doing. They should be doing structured play, which we're going to get into. Is what's a proper development model for a kid? At best, if you do want to try to make the best run at longevity in the sport, and psychologically they're a sound individual and they're well-rounded, is to go through this by the numbers. 0 to 6 years old, from the time they're an infant onward into around 6 or 7, and now these ages may flip depending on gender. We find that psychologically a lot of female athletes are about a year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
as far as maturity level, physically and mentally, psychologically, they're just a little bit ahead of the boys typically. Now, that's not always the case, and every kid's different. You have kids hit puberty early. I had friends of mine in junior high, 7th grade, that had a 5 o'clock shadow. Just different levels of testosterone there at that age. But they should be doing unorganized play. Like we mentioned earlier, we don't really remember people keeping score very much. For like a youth soccer game at 5 years old, they ran around, they kicked the ball. Sometimes they kicked the ball into the wrong net. Nobody really cares. They're having fun.
It's just to score.
They're learning how to dribble.
Yeah.
They're learning how to work as a team. And it's a social environment. And that's what it should be about. They're learning enjoyment for the sport. They're learning
absolutely
a love of the sport.
They're having fun while participating in sport without the concentration on getting the W.
Yeah, the big W.
But right now, there's travel soccer teams that are 6, 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
Kids traveling for 2-3 hours for a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And they're playing sport all day long, every weekend.
I had a coach at the high school here, and he's one of the football coaches. He said that he has I forget how old his daughter is now, but when she was really young, like 7 or 8, he was approached about his daughter playing travel ball. I think it was soccer or softball. I can't remember specifically what it was. And he said, have you ever thought about your daughter playing, on our travel team? And he kind of looked at him and said, oh, maybe, I'll have to ask her and see what she wants to do, because you're going to ask the kid, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure how the rest of the conversation transpired, but it ended up being that, well, how do you expect your daughter to go Division I if you don't, invest the time now at 8 years old?
Yeah.
And the coach, he's a sport coach. He's been involved with youth sports for probably a good decade or more.
Mm-hmm.
He just looked at him like, where did you play? The guy couldn't answer him because he didn't play anywhere. Now, does that necessarily mean that you're, what you're talking about as far as, what it takes? I've coached people. I'd never played collegiate anything.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college. I went to a community college. I thought about, getting involved with the cross-country team, but I never did. I got too busy. That ship sailed for me. But we were talking about this earlier with club coaches.
Yeah. The
private organizations that are involved with getting these kids involved with playing year-round is the major driver. It's become a major business. Yeah. It's a money grab. It's an industry now. I think it's great that they're affording opportunities for kids to go play at, elsewhere, especially if you live in a small area where there's not a lot of competition. I think it's great that they have the opportunity to travel and go play other teams that they would never see otherwise unless at a state tournament. That's great. But to sit there and tell the parent of an 8-year-old that your kid's not going to go anywhere if you don't play year-round, that's just nuts. And he basically told him to pound sand.
So this was probably 4 years ago, and I was reffing in a huge AAU basketball tournament down at Villanova at the university. And there was kids from the age of 8 to the age of 18 playing on these teams. And there would be teams that would come walking in, full uniform, backpack, matching sneakers for travel ball. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
And these kids would come in, and I remember saying to one of the parents, like, you guys must all be from the same area, that you're representing the same team.
Yeah,
like, oh, no,
3 different counties probably.
We're from all over the place, but this is the best basketball program in our area. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, who's the like, who runs it? Like, oh no, and I remember asking, how much have you paid for the year? And it was ballpark, $2,500 per kid. And I'm like, and this parents said this to me.
And how old are these kids?
Same price. His price, that was the young kids. That was like the 8-year-olds.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, we're talking, the price is going to go up as the kids get older.
Yeah.
But all of the kids, so say there was 4 different teams, boys and girls teams alike. So 8 teams total, 4 different age brackets, all completely outfitted in shorts, travel shirt, or sweatsuit, backpack, sneakers, matching socks, the whole thing. So they're crazy. Spending $2,500. I mean, you do the math.
Yeah.
$2,500 for a team of 8 to 10 kids times 8 teams.
Yeah.
we're talking big money.
Yeah.
I mean, and ultimately what it came down to is that
Mm-hmm.
whomever started that organization or business or whatever it was a money grab.
Oh yeah, big time.
We're gonna teach you
Mm-hmm.
diluted sport
Yeah.
and take
And
your money.
unfortunately, a lot of parents fall victim to it, especially if they didn't have a sporting background, or maybe they had a sporting background, but they just weren't that great. There's some latent, memories going on there, living through your child. There's plenty of parents out there like that.
Or the ones that thought they were better than they were.
Yes. And having a private coach come up to them and try to sell them that platform is like a perfect catalyst for the whole thing to go awry and the whole journey to go downhill from there. Let's get moving forward with the 6 to 10-year-old range. Like I said before, these ages aren't set in stone. These are just based off of a few different papers that I saw. 6 to 10 years old, semi-organized play is ideal. They should be learning to run, jump, swim, basic movement patterns like youth gymnastics is great for any kid, from you're talking a football player to a wrestler to an archer to a swimmer. They should be learning how to manipulate their body.
Yeah.
Gymnastics across the board, and I don't really know any coaches that would disagree that they have an easier time learning other sports after being introduced to that discipline.
Oh, definitely. Without a doubt.
Better strength, better movement, better flexibility. 10 to 16 years old, so you're working preteen into the high school years. Multiple sports, but not overly competitive. Should they be playing games? Should they be keeping score? Yes, absolutely. They're starting to learn the concept of competition. They know the fundamentals of the game now. They're refining skills. They're getting better at those individual skills that they have, whether their position's a goalie on a soccer team or a forward on a basketball team. They should be refining their skills.
And here's just a noteworthy comment on that 10 to 16-year-old age group. I read an article yesterday, and I think Robin Cuck actually may have either shared it or she commented
I'm sure she did.
About, because she's a huge advocate for college teams are now recruiting, or you're seeing kids in 8th grade, as early as 8th grade, verbally committing to colleges for athletics. And I think this happened for softball.
Insane. Yeah,
this happened for softball because there's some kind of rule, and she was a Division I softball player. She can explain better, but there's some kind of rule where colleges can't recruit once they hit 9th grade through. I'm not really sure what the dynamic is there, but so you have that, you have colleges recruiting, you have. If I see LeBron James' son on ESPN one more time or on their Facebook page,
that's how out of touch I am basketball.
I mean, it's crazy that how deep these athletic organizations, even professional sports now. I mean, it's not really the NBA, it's really ESPN and the media and stuff like that that's driving into it. But there's the hype they make about these young athletes. It's just it's a very toxic, volatile type of thing.
Yeah, people see dollar signs, including the parents. Unfortunately,
it's true. That's very true.
And they should be sampling sports. Like I said, those sports lend to each other. And I've seen a drop in participation in track and field since I was in school. We always looked at track and field as spring training for the football team. Your running backs were doing sprints. They weren't running the 100, the 200. They were doing hurdles. The linemen were throwing. They were doing the shot and the disc, maybe the javelin. Even some of our smaller linemen that were guards, that were the fast guys, some of them were running the 100-meter, and they were pretty darn good. You really don't see that anymore.
No.
It's very low in participation. What we see is they come out their senior year.
Yeah.
And they're running pretty good numbers for first time, but they only have a few months in the sport. They come to a few practices, and then they're done. They graduate. And they never really had the chance to really dive into that. The 4 years they were there in high school, they had that medal shot available to them with a coach available to them for 4 years at their public school for free. Total blown opportunity to get that kid involved with something like that, because it's just not there. People don't look at it as, we're getting ready for football by lifting. Sure, and I'm a lifting coach. I think it's great, but they forget, well, we do that too on the track and field team. We are lifting weights. We're doing strength and conditioning. It's pretty much a very large, organized strength and conditioning program that allows people to get into their niche. They find their niche. You find, oh, I'm really not great at running, but I can jump really well. That gives a kid opportunity to win. Gives the kid an opportunity to excel at something that maybe they didn't even know existed.
Or find something that they're passionate about. And I think that might be a little bit of a segue into the next point, but something that they're passionate about that they want to improve on. They find that they really enjoy it. They might not be the best.
Yeah.
They're going to experience some, call it failure, call it frustration, something that they're passionate about that they're going to want to get better at. And the way you do that is by, experiencing failure.
Yeah, you get back up.
You got to get back up and do it again.
A kid that doesn't want to get back up after that, it's just not meant for them at that point. They got to find something else for themselves.
We had a discussion a little bit ago about my sport and about some discussion in the one youth archery organization where they're wanting to add classes, and my standpoint on it, and a lot of the parents out there in this organization didn't agree with it. Yeah. They want to add classes because if there's 50 kids in one category at nationals and there's only 5, 8, 10 kids that are competitive, those rest of the kids should feel like they should get an opportunity to win too. And I'm like,
what's the point of having the tournament?
What's the point? Yeah, exactly. What are we teaching them by saying, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to give you this category, this category, this category, then you all get an opportunity to win. No.
Sounds like powerlifting.
No, I mean,
10 different federations. I don't like your rules, so we're going to make our own category.
Well, that happens.
Splinters. You have splinters.
That happens.
And then what happens is you have a disunified mess of a sport because of it. But if I had a kid in archery or have kids in weightlifting, that maybe they won't have a podium. Maybe they will.
Yeah.
It's too early to tell at 10, 11, 13 years old.
Absolutely.
So what you do is, you finished 15th. Most kids didn't even qualify. You made it there. You finished 15th in the country for your age group. Not terrible, not podium, but your goal next year should be make top 10.
Yep.
Make top 5. Those are stepping stones, not, you only made 15th place, so we're going to have a 15th place medal. No. What's the point? Where do we shoot for? What's the goal?
If you as a coach is telling your kid, this trip is a failure if you don't make the podium, and this is this child's first opportunity at a national. Do you remember the first time you went to nationals with your athletes?
Yes.
I bet you were probably more nervous than they were.
I was terrified. I had no clue what I was doing.
You almost chalk that feeling up to, listen, this is the year we come. We figure out the dynamics of the sport, of the whole competition, get used to the whole process, and chalk it up as a learning experience. If you go in and podium your first time, that's impressive. It doesn't matter what the sport is.
It's very impressive.
But if you have to kind of just accept it for what it is.
You get what you get.
You go, gain the experience, have the fun, and then the next year you're like, okay, I know where I'm going. I know how to register. And that's stress. That's stress.
Yep.
I know how to
Once you have that
I know where the waiting room
Yeah.
is. We get to this point, and then all of a sudden, then the following year, you're like, okay, well, my goal is top
And it's
one.
like that as a coach. I don't stress nearly as much as I used to. I made up my mind 2 years ago not to.
Speaking of national competitive athletes,
McDonough is on.
I mean,
Hello, McDonough.
It would be awesome to have a kid like her who is still an amazing athlete, isn't necessarily competing, on a national level right now.
You never know.
And to get some feedback though. Not that she'd probably be horrendous on like a live feed.
I gotta ask her.
But she's probably like, I don't want to talk. But I mean, prime example to describe what that experience was like, because she was fairly young. I think
she was. She might have been 14 the first time she went.
To make her way
14,
up through
15,
the ranks and
like that.
I mean, it's just
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but then you get to that age group.
The semi, number 4, the fourth stage is semi or full specialization in their talent / passion. Again, those two things really need to be synonymous. If they don't have a passion for it, they don't have the desire to compete at that level, particular sport, whether, I don't care if they can shoot blind in Robin Hood and Arrow on demand. If they don't like it,
they don't like it.
They're not going to last in the sport.
If a child, it doesn't matter what the sport is, and then we see this in archery all the time. Mom and dad shoot, dad shoots, whomever shoots, and it's this.
Yeah.
You have to win, or you have to shoot good, or and that's a sometimes it's the parents that are a little more passionate than the kids are.
Yeah,
and it is what it is. You can't force your child to be passionate about the exact same thing.
No, that's not
that you are.
They have to learn that on their own and find it on their own. And that's semi to full specialization. When we mean semi, okay, they're focusing on football, but they're still doing other things that are helping their sport, like track and field. They're still hitting the weights, which if they're a football player, they should be hitting the weights,
right?
Regardless. They're still doing things like wrestling. I specifically recall as a sophomore finishing our varsity year with football, the wrestling coach came in to film our last day of film. On our last week, we were in the middle of playoffs, and he came in the film room. They stopped the film, and he talked to us for a full 10 minutes and explained, I'm the high school wrestling coach here. All you big guys, all your running backs, all your linemen, you should be coming out for the wrestling team because, A, it's going to teach you balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to teach you
mm-hmm.
discipline because you have to be disciplined on that team. It's one of the hardest sports out there.
Yeah.
I think any kid, any parent, if they're thinking about whether or not to get your kid involved with another sport and whether it's wrestling, you get approached about, your kid asks you, can I do the wrestling team when they're 12, 13 years old? Let them do it. If they do it for one season, it's really going to shape who they are. It's a life-changing experience going through a sport like that, where something's that difficult.
Yeah.
And you don't know what it's going to do for them. But like I said, in large part, it helps their athleticism when they get back out on the field next year.
Absolutely.
And we just don't have that going on quite as much. Like I said, there's not a lot of multi-sport. It's, I'm going to live for football. I'm going to play football. That's it.
Yeah, and there is a little bit of an issue with coaches, not being that supportive and pushing the football coach, pushing the lineman or any of the players for that matter.
Yeah.
Go play basketball.
Yeah.
Go wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll have a basketball coach say, don't play football. You're too good. Just let's work on it.
Don't get hurt
for basketball season.
Don't get hurt.
So I want you to train from, August through October and then come into basketball in November, beginning of December.
Now there's a time and place for that though. I think if you have a senior in high school that has a letter of intent already,
yes,
and they're a Division I level track and field athlete,
which is a very small percentage.
But let's say my cousin just got picked up by Indiana. She's a 0.1% kid. You just don't have kids come out like that.
Right.
Once a decade. She medaled all 4 years at states at Ohio, and Ohio is not a slouch track and field environment.
Yeah.
So she got a Division I scholarship. She got her pick of the litter. She could have went to Penn State. She really could have went anywhere. Now, that being said, she was a gymnast. She was a competitive cheerleader, believe it or not. She did a plethora of things. Her dad, my cousin, he encouraged her to do all these things. He got her involved with strength training, got her involved with gymnastics. When it was time to, okay, this is your talent and this is your passion. You're, great at this one thing. They pulled away from the competitive chair and they pulled away from the gymnastics, but she had the foundation because of that. Mm-hmm. So senior year came around. That was her sole focus. Her junior, senior year, sole focus was track and field because that's what her main talent was. That was
her bread and butter.
That was her bread and butter, and it paid off. But they didn't do that until she was already in the middle of high school. They didn't do that early on. If you want to see legit athletes, come to Valley Forge, July 28th at 10:30 a.m.
Yeah, shameless plug. Come see.
Shameless plug. Yes, we have a couple athletes from Fearless Barbell lifting at the American Open Series for USA Weightlifting down at the Valley Forge Casino and Resort, July 27th through the 29th. It's a 3D event in Olympic weightlifting, snatch, clean, and jerk, 3 attempts each. We've got 3 athletes competing.
Yeah.
One of college age, one of master's age, and one of them is in between those 2 ages somewhere. So we have a variety of lifters throughout the region showing up at this event. I believe it's supposed to be over 500 lifters throughout the weekend.
Wow.
It's a huge tournament. I mean, I'm talking about the last heat going at 8:30 at night on Sunday.
My life just cut out.
Did it cut out?
Yeah.
But we're not even violating any copyright infringement. I don't have any music playing in the background.
It's all right. We'll continue it now.
So that 14 to 17-year-old category for the semi to full specialization, that's when it's appropriate. You have a kid that really has that ability level. It's for sure a thing. They're getting looked at, and you don't want to risk an injury, or you would just want to spend more time working on those skills. By all means, that's the time to specialize to get ready to the next level. Definitely not 5 years old, definitely not 10 years old, not even 13, 14 years old. Really.
What, a 5-year-old shouldn't play travel soccer every weekend, 10 months out of the year?
No, absolutely not. Just some other stats to kind of cap off some of the things that we found, random stuff here. Under 1% reach Division I scholarships. 88% of NFL draftees are multi-season athletes. 88%.
That's a lot.
Maybe not in college, but they're doing it in high school. They're doing it in youth. They're doing other sports besides just football. And that's proof in, like, if what was the coach at Ohio? Urban Meyer,
yeah.
Urban Meyer. He specifically looks for that.
Yeah.
He specifically looks for that.
Yeah, Robin, again, to mention Robin Cook, her maiden name is Trezise. She played Division I softball at Hofstra. And
no kidding.
She was a multi-sport athlete, and she has mentioned that. We've had this exact discussion, and she's mentioned that to me in the past, where her coaches were very specific that they were looking for multi-sport athletes. That's
overuse injuries, 42% increase in risk of injury in high school athletes who only specialize in one sport.
wow.
So as soon as you're entering your freshman year and you dump all the other sports and you're playing soccer year round, you're playing. And I don't want to sound like I'm picking on soccer or baseball, but those seem to be the 2 major offenders as far as that goes.
As far as
Because
specialization and
yeah.
year-round.
Well, they're not viewed as contact sports. Even though
Right.
soccer is very much a contact
Yeah.
sport, especially outside this country. It's played completely different.
Yeah.
It's much more physical.
42%
Yeah.
is a huge. So almost half of every one of these kids out there playing these sports is going to get injured.
Yep, because they're
Crazy.
doing nothing but that all the time. It's not even that they're like, we'll give the football players a break there. They're not playing their sport year round, so it's less likely to happen. And if you played a collision sport like that year round, you're going to get hurt.
Right.
It's not an if, it's a when.
It's a win, right?
But we're talking about someone who's specifically doing their sport year round and nothing but that. They're at risk really high for injury. Just to finish off here, sport participation, what do we get now? We're not telling people not to do sports.
No.
What we're telling them is the primary thing that you should be focusing on is enjoyment, their health. They're healthy, active kids because of this. And they learn important life skills beyond just kicking a ball. They learn how to work with other people, which is something that they're going to have to do later on when they're in the job fields.
I think your dad has said this multiple. Coachable kids become employable adults.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely goes hand in hand. If you don't know how to work with other people and follow direction from a coach or follow leadership within your organization, you're going to have a really hard time getting along with anybody in any organization that you end up at. These people, and I see them complaining on the social media in this area about this boss and that boss. And it seems like the same people are always leaving the employment. It was this person or that person's fault.
Absolutely.
I didn't like my boss. I didn't like my manager. They have these rose-colored glasses when they're looking at themselves, but everyone else is shaking their heads going, oh boy, you really need to, get over yourself and learn to work with other people,
Absolutely.
whether you like them or not.
Yeah.
You're going to I had teammates that I didn't really care for, but when it came time to playing on a team together, that was all that mattered. Was we had a job to do.
Yeah.
And that's what people have trouble with. They don't learn how to deal with other people. They should be learning those skills, the social skills, really. Early diversification is more likely to improve overall athletic performance and development versus specification. The more diverse you are, the better off you're going to be later on down the road. Did you want to get into anything else? I know you talked about the pickup games.
Well, I mean, it just there was an article, and I happened to share it today, and it was in regards to kids not participating in the general pickup game anymore. The social aspect of sports has been kicked to the curb for the competitive aspect of sports. The idea that, you know, we have to practice day in and day out, and you know, I know there are parents that go out and their kids are hitting baseballs, throwing baseballs every single day. And I'll go back to
they don't do that to MLB players.
They
give them rest.
Absolutely not.
They have to recover from
every
that.
single day.
Throwing 100 mile an hour fastballs, you got to recover from that.
I hear this, and I see this mostly on social media where people who are big into archery, or they claim they are, they're bow hunters that are, you know, want to be the next Cam Hanes, or, you know, one of these big, you know, at these athletic type bow hunters. It's like a thing now. They're like, oh, I shoot 300 arrows a day. I'm like, okay, so what happens when your form sucks and you're just reinforcing that bad form 300 times a shot?
You have a certain amount of reps.
It's quantity versus quality. It's always and I've yet to find a sport where it's always quality versus quantity.
And you add volume when you're ready for it.
Exactly. Well, periodization. It's this.
The undulating
it's every sport. There's really no. I mean, football's been doing it for years.
Yeah.
2-a-days, this, that. Then you get into the season, and you're not doing 2-a-days anymore in the season for a reason.
Off. You got to recover.
Yeah, and it's just it's this one of these this mode that with pickup sports, you know, kids used to probably just natural. We had better natural athletes 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Because the kids were constantly doing other things. You know, and pickup sports is one of those things that was the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, they were just recreating.
Yeah, that's
They're
it.
going and playing outside with their friends.
If they played one sport, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
they still do
other part of the year, they probably ended up playing that sport.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't play football, but I played tackle football as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Every opportunity I got, right up into my 20s.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, you did it. Played baseball. Hey, everybody's going to the basketball court. Didn't matter if you were good at basketball.
No, it was terrible. I still played.
Just go to the courts. Where are you going? I'm going to the courts.
Every summer we played out in front of my house.
It's just one of those things, and it just doesn't happen like it used to. You know, instead parents are saying go out into the driveway and shoot 200 free throws. Yeah. Because you have a game tomorrow.
Don't forget to drink your protein powder.
Oh yeah, don't forget that. It's just, you know, prime example.
Oh boy.
No, that's all I wanted to add on that little tidbit. But
well, guys, we rambled on for an hour and 8 minutes.
Oh my goodness!
I hope it was great, juicy content for you all. We hope to do another one together at some point.
Yeah,
I got a list of episodes I want to get through here.
Yeah, I think we in general conversation and even amongst discussing this topic, like there's other topics that we could discuss probably.
Oh yeah,
that are related to just youth sports or athletics in general or whatever. But we'll definitely do some more. But thank you. I mean, my Instagram live feed cut out, but I got like one person watching right now. Thanks for tuning back in, and thanks for having me. It was fun.
Oh, it was great. I'd like to do it again.
We will.
And I would be willing to invite anybody on the show that wants to do the next couple episodes with me. All you gotta do is shoot me a message or an email. Come stop me in the hallway. Once again, if you guys you have questions, you want to get a hold of either one of us, shoot us an email. This is Frank. He's at Grass Hollow Archery. He's right here in Orwigsburg. I'm on the other end of town in Deer Lake at Fluid Fitness Solutions, 1506 Center Turnpike. That's Route 61. And you can give me a call, give me an email, fluidfitnesssolutions@gmail.com.
Yep. And you can reach us on our Facebook page, Grass Hollow Archery, or where our actual training center has its own Facebook page as well, Grass Hollow Training Center. You can find us at www.grasshollowarchery.com. You can follow me on Instagram. It's a public profile. That's where I do all my archery content. And again, if you have kids or even you as an adult is looking for another activity, by all means, reach out to us. We do a ton of private lessons and all general bow work here, just the same for bow hunters and competitors. So definitely,
it's a good time.
It is a good time. It's definitely a good time when you enjoy it. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.